Hi, everyone. I'm Brennan Lafferty, publisher of Sustainable Plastics and Plastics News. Welcome to Ask the Expert, our new live stream series. Now, with Ask the Expert, this is your chance to engage with professionals to address the current business environment, to discuss new developments, and most importantly, to ask some questions. This week's topic is of vital importance: plastics recycling and the circular economy. We have 4 live streams scheduled this week dealing with supply chain collaboration, trends in technology, the recyclability of plastics, and reducing energy. Today's topic: trends, technologies, and jumping into the circular economy. Our expert today, Mr. Walter Ripple, Vice President Sustainability at Avient. Now, Walter will answer your questions after his presentation. That said, you can submit a question at any time. To do so, email spevents@crane.com, or if you're watching this live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, send your questions through those platforms. With that, I'll turn things over to Walter Ripple, Vice President Sustainability at Avient. Take it away, Walter.
Thanks, Brennan. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I get started, I'd like to let everybody know that PolyOne has changed our name to Avient as a result of our recent acquisition of the Clariant Master Batch business. Together at Avient, we'll drive advanced technologies that help our customers with their sustainability goals, with innovative technologies, and with speed to market. So with that being said, I'm very excited to dive into a topic that's very near and dear to my heart: sustainability. I've had the privilege to lead the sustainability efforts at Avient Corporation for the last year and a half or so. And of course, it's a personal passion of mine. So I look forward to sharing our perspective on sustainability, and hopefully it will be insightful for you as well. Today, I'm going to start out by defining sustainability just to get us all on the same page, and then talk about some macro trends and some implications of that. And then I'll dive a little bit into the circular economy and some solutions as a result of that. I'm asked so many times what the definition of sustainability is, and the word is used in so many contexts now, for sure. I personally still believe that one of the best definitions of sustainability was the one that was developed way back in 1987, and that was the United Nations Brundtland Report. And I know you've seen this definition a number of times, but sustainability was defined at that time as meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations' abilities to meet theirs. It's a definition that has really stood the test of time. And another widely accepted tenet of sustainability is that there are 3 pillars. And that is that companies should have more purpose than profits alone, but also environmental and social purpose as well. So let's talk next about some macro trends that are impacting our industry. There are many, and they're all interrelated in some form or fashion, but it all really is about, of course, protecting our planet ultimately. But there's been a real acceleration of these trends in the past few years. That's partly been driven certainly by the social media that are driving consumers now to be more aware and more engaged than ever before. Who doesn't know Greta Thunberg, for example? And consumer behavior and expectations are also changing. They're demanding action by OEMs and other customers and by their governments to do something. And that action is starting to take place. And certainly the perception of plastics has taken a real hit here in the last few years, with pictures of plastics waste in oceans and rivers, and also impacts to ocean wildlife for sure. As an industry, we have to manage the balance between sharing the tremendous sustainability that plastics offers while acknowledging the plastics waste problem. But more importantly, what are we doing about it? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that a little later in the presentation. What are the implications? Well, there's no question that these trends are putting pressure on companies throughout the value chain to be more sustainable and to look internally on how you better operate your business to achieve these standards. Let's take a look at some of these implications. I'm going to do that in the next few slides. First, it's time to prioritize sustainability if you want to prosper over time. Many of our stakeholders, and now more than ever driven by the consumer, want to do business with environmentally and socially conscious suppliers. It's about reputation for sure, but it's also about reduced costs, greater efficiency, and a richer value proposition that we can provide to our customers. And certainly part of that is managing your natural resources in ways that will improve your impact on the planet. Second, the time is now. I hate to use the cliche, but it's either get on the bus or you're going to miss the party. Consumers are demanding this. OEMs are listening to the consumers about this, and no one has not heard OEMs asking for the same too. So we have to listen for the OEMs. And make no mistake, investors are expecting it as well. Next, transparency is key. For years, B2B manufacturing has operated in stealth mode, especially around environmentally and social factors. The expectations are that you will be transparent about your operations and how you impact the environment. Many of your customers are already doing this, and I'm sure they're requesting that you do the same. I know they are with us. They want to be able to ensure their customers that their suppliers are also on track. Another reason why the time for sustainability is now is because increasingly it'll be difficult to hire talented associates if you don't have a strong sustainability program in place. Corporate social responsibility is now table stakes for most young candidates who are seeking an employer. And now more than ever, consumers are taking notice of how companies treat their associates. All they have to do is watch social media and they'll know exactly how you're doing. Finally, sustainability is truly a long game. It involves investing now to reap the benefits later. That means rethinking some of the fundamental elements of your business and putting the proper management systems and processes in place to ensure steady progress. But it will be critical for your long-term survival to find ways to become both sustainable and profitable. And those efforts don't have to be mutually exclusive. Now let me just switch gears for a minute and talk about the circular economy. In summary, the circular economy is an economic system that minimizes waste and uses natural resources wisely. You may have seen this make, use, recycle graphic before. It represents the idea of keeping products and materials in use over and over again and maintaining value along the way. This is opposed to the more standard linear economy, which is often referred to as a take, make, and dispose economy. This is definitely a great goal, and many of our companies, I'm sure, and also OEMs have made commitments in alignment with the circular economy. So how are we doing? Let me answer that question with a question. What would you guess is the percent of plastics waste recycled annually on a global scale? Now, while you're formulating your answer, remember to keep in mind that not all countries or regions around the world have the infrastructure or systems in place like some of the Western-based countries. So what's the answer? It's estimated that only 9% of plastics waste is recycled on a global basis. So there's a lot of work to be done for sure. And this is certainly the reason why single-use plastics are getting such a bad rap right now. So why is the number so low? Well, collecting and sorting plastics is still difficult. We have to make throwing used plastic articles into the recycle bin as easy as throwing waste into the waste bin. And there's also a performance issue with recycling. With each heat history, properties tend to degrade without some type of intervention. And finally, recycled materials are more expensive because they cost more to produce. So as an industry, we need to work together to solve this challenge of our times. One way to do that is through partnerships and alliances that help to solve the plastics waste problem, such as the Alliance to End Plastics Waste. Now, this was an alliance that Avient was a founding member of beginning at the beginning of last year. This organization is with about 50 members up and down the value chain who have committed to invest $1.5 billion over the next 5 years to solve the plastics waste problem. And I know that there are other organizations out there as well. And another is through technology innovations. And I'm going to show you a few on the next page. At Avient, we've developed a number of solutions that enable our customers' circular economy goals in terms of improving recyclability and using less materials. From additives that allow more recycled content into a package, or toners or scavengers that mask the off-color or odor of recycled materials, to viscosity builders that actually help to improve rPET mechanical performance, or to help just simply keep more PET in the recycle stream in the first place. Also to additives that help to reduce wall thicknesses of package so you can use less plastic in the package in the first place. But improved recycling is not the only way that we've been working. We're also working with customers to meet the broader challenges of sustainability. And we've categorized those solutions into the 8 ways that we enable our customers to do so. In addition to the ones that I mentioned, we're working toward a number of other solutions. For example, making lightweight plastics, or just simply making plastics lighter. That could be improving fuel efficiency in combustion engines or battery life in electric vehicles, for example, or lowering energy use during our customers' production of their parts, or incorporating more bio-based content, or even enabling renewable energy, just to name a few. So there are many solutions out there around improving the sustainability of plastics. Finally, I just want to say that our industry really has the ability to flip the script on plastics and sustainability. We can promote the tremendous sustainable value of plastics while banding together to solve the plastics waste problem. Through partnerships and technology advances, we really make a difference for a sustainable world. Thank you very much for your time. And with that, we'll open the floor for questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Walter. Great presentation. We do have questions coming in. We're going to get to those right now. But first, a reminder, if you weren't here at the top of the show, to submit a question to Walter, you can email spevents@crane.com, or if you're watching the live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, send the questions through those platforms. So, Walter, first question here. As you delve deeper into the topic of plastics and the environment, what are you learning? What's Avient learning?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I've been in the industry for, well, let's just leave it at over 25 years. And I think back to that time and what we were doing with plastics and what the value of plastics were at the time. Now, the word sustainability wasn't coming up for sure. But the real growth platform for plastics at that time was to lightweight products, make products safer, cheaper to transport. For example, replacing glass. And so we also made products, if you think about dropping a glass as opposed to dropping a plastic bottle, you know, one would break and cause some issues. And there were hospitals that wanted to be more safe in terms of surgical procedures, et cetera. So I guess what I'm saying is that much of the growth of plastics has really been because they're sustainable. Mm-hmm. So as I look back at that perspective now, you know, the thing that hasn't happened though is that infrastructure is not kept up to be able to recycle those plastics as that growth has really accelerated in the last decade or so. And so, you know, that was one of the reasons I mentioned earlier, the Alliance to End Plastics Waste. That was one of the reasons we were a founding member of that organization, because, you know, they recognize, the Alliance recognizes the fact that we need to band together across the value chain. In this particular case, we have all the way from polymer and additive suppliers like ourselves, or Dow Chemical, or LyondellBasell, for example, all the way to brand owners like P&G and PepsiCo, and everyone in between. All dedicated to solving one problem, and that's plastics waste. Again, investing a lot of money towards innovation, the infrastructure that is needed, and that's really important, as well as education and cleanup.
That's interesting. I didn't realize infrastructure improvements were part of the mandate for the Alliance. Absolutely,
and that will probably be a pretty large component of their investment.
Yeah, certainly is needed here in the States, that's for sure. Okay, Walter, another question that's come in. Can you tell me a little bit more about how Avient is supporting the shift to a circular economy?
Sure, absolutely. And I mentioned a couple of the solutions a little bit earlier, but we really do try to take a holistic approach in trying to understand what our customers' needs are around sustainability in general, but also around circular economy. And it's not always easy to incorporate enough recycled plastics to get to some of the goals that a lot of OEMs out there have committed to be have all of their products be recyclable. For example, if you look at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation commitments, 25% recycle content, up to 30. I've even seen some talk about 50% recycle content. That's not very easy to do, and it's not one solution. There's not one product that can make that happen. So we work with our customers to try to understand, are they trying to get plastics out? Are they trying to put more content in there? Are they trying to get a clearer material? Are they trying to improve the mechanical properties? And we have solutions for all of those. And many times it takes a number of those solutions to actually solve the ultimate problem, including some of both the design and the processing help that we can provide them. So, certainly I'd be happy to share a lot more detail about that if anyone has questions about that after the call.
Very good. All right, we have our first question in from YouTube. So
okay.
It's about the flexible packaging. The question is, what is the most efficient way to engage the entire supply chain to effectively achieve recyclability in flexible packaging? Any thoughts on that, Walter?
Well, absolutely. I think that one's certainly one of the more challenging, I think, challenges that we have. Because there's many times multiple materials. And I think embedded in that question is actually part of the answer. This is going to take the supply chain coming together to figure this out, all the way from the waste management companies to the polymer suppliers, to the folks that are putting this all together in the design firms to figure out how do we reduce the number of materials that are going in or make them more compatible while still being able to manage the mechanical properties that are all needed. There obviously isn't a solution to that right now, but there are a lot of people that are working on that. But you really have to take all of those aspects into account, both design, the amount of plastics, the type of plastics, and how they all interact together, and how at the end of the day it can be recycled from the infrastructure that we have now or in the future.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. There's so many factors that go into this. We were looking at a shampoo bottle on Monday that was made of virgin material and it was white. Now it's made of recycled material and it's black. So yeah, design, as you said, goes into it, the availability of material. So here's a question. I think you went over this, but if someone's asking, and this was sent in through email, so thank you. If someone's asking, I think we might need a little more pointed comment on this. Walter, what could be the value proposition if costs are higher, apart from being greener? I think why a move towards more sustainable materials if the costs are higher? What are the other advantages?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about protecting our planet, right? And as I had talked about earlier, I think that's really been one of the big shifts from a macro trend standpoint is around consumer behavior and what they know about and the action that they want to take. So one part of that, of course, is making sure that we're not putting any waste into the environment, including, of course, plastics waste. And plastics waste, because it floats, is very visible. And so, I think it has now become almost, if you will, synonymous with climate issues and just simply protecting the environment. So I think consumers are now driving it. I think that's what's different. I would say even looking only 10 years ago, there was a small push towards, hey, let's have green stuff. And I think a lot of companies came up with stuff that was green. But at the end of the day, that wasn't really the consumer that was pushing that. That's what has changed. The consumer is pushing. The consumer are going to these OEM brands and saying, look, I'm not going to buy your product unless you can tell me that it's not going to hurt the environment, that you're going to recycle it. And some OEMs have, and consumer brands have actually begun to take it a step further and say, this is what our carbon footprint is, which is pretty amazing. as more and more companies do that, and consumer companies do that, it's going to drive even more awareness, and then the consumer are going to ask the next customer and the next customer to do the exact same thing. So I think the difference now is that consumers are asking for it and driving it, and I think they're ultimately going to be willing to pay a little bit more to do things that are helping the environment, or at least not hurting it.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, 10 years ago, that's probably the right number. Yeah, there was a small group of folks who were, making some noise on the consumer front. Now that voice is amplified.
Absolutely.
All right. So back to the macro. In your opinion, Walter, what is the biggest recycling challenge or obstacle we are facing today?
I think that it's kind of combined. I think collection and sorting is one of our biggest issues, but part of that is the education so that you can do better collection. So, I gave an example earlier. There's a moment of truth by almost everybody every single day. When you finish using a product that's in a plastic packaging, of what am I going to do with this? Am I going to throw it in this bin, or am I going to throw it in that bin? And, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that we need to make that decision process as easy to throw in a recycle bin as it is to throw in the waste bin. And we're not there yet. If anything, it's very confusing. So I think combined, there's an education effort that has to go on. Maybe we need to look at our system of how we label and what is actually recycled, and make it very easy and clean if we don't ultimately go to even a single recycle type of process that then is sorted out later on. I think if we can combine education with a better collection process, and then being able to sort it, I think that'll make a huge improvement in the recycled content that we have now.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. That education piece never stops either, does it? It's as people age and as the next generation comes up, these messages need to be stated over and over again.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, Walter, we're back to YouTube. When engaging your plastic supplier, how do you envision getting over the challenge of suppliers guarding their information to protect their own IP and prevent customers bypassing them?
Well, I think it's a good question, obviously, and I certainly understand why suppliers don't want to, share all of their secrets or secret sauce, if you will. But at the end of the day, I just think that it's going to take collaboration between the entire value chain to make this happen. I can tell you again, not to talk the entire day about the Alliance to End Plastics Waste, but I think there's some really good practices there. We've been able to come together as this consortium, again, across the value chain, and be able to push activities forward without having to actually share every bit of everyone's proprietary information, which, naturally they don't want to do. But I think you have to form partnerships. You have to develop credibility and have some specific projects to go after, and hopefully they'll be willing to talk to you a little bit more about that. There's no question that's a very good question, because that is a challenge, and it is something that I think all of us in this industry really have to understand and make sure that we're pushing things forward.
Yeah, and you may have touched on this earlier. I think transparency is important. As we work together to solve this problem. So I'm sure that would be a part of the solution as well.
Absolutely. And, that's both in terms of product design, of course, and product innovation, because obviously as you bring people together, or companies together, we're going to be able to move faster. But it's also becoming more and more about what you're doing from an environmental standpoint. It's also, and this is maybe a little bit newer, but it's really accelerating now. It's also being transparent about what you're doing from a social impact as well. And that's, engaging your stakeholders in your communities. What are you doing with and for your associates? Are you a great place to work? Do people keep coming back? Do you have a good diversity and inclusion record? All of those types of things. And that's going to be becoming more and more, I think, a topic for if a customer wants to buy from you. And if an investor wants to invest in you, for that matter as well.
Yeah. Well, it's an old adage, and I think it's true. People buy from people they like. And so if you're buying from someone who's fulfilled and happy at a company, that's only going to help you in the long run. It's difficult to measure at times, but it's a good thing for sure.
Yes, I agree.
All right. An email question, Walter, at spevents@crane.com. Do you find OEMs pushing for third-party testing or confirmation that products are truly sustainable? That's an interesting question.
I have seen it. I'll say that it isn't necessarily prevalent yet, at least that's just from my experience. I think over time, as we move more and more to standards, that may be becoming more and more. Certainly on the climate change standpoint, obviously there's the TCFD and the SASB organizations that are requesting more and more disclosures around climate change. But in terms of the TCFD, they are asking that you do get third-party certifications. I'm seeing it more and more, but I wouldn't say that it's prevalent yet for us. I think it is because I think companies are trying to make sure, and it's really, again, being driven by the consumer, that companies aren't greenwashing. I think more and more over time, that will be something that you have to do, is get some type of certification to prove different aspects of sustainability. Absolutely, I think that will happen.
Yeah, I know that used to be a little more prevalent. I don't know if they're still out there. Those companies and those kind of a good housekeeping seal of approval,
right,
as you were.
Right. And there are quite a few of those out there now, but it's on very specific topics, as what I've seen.
Yeah, fair. So interesting. I've been talking to executives all across the country and the world about COVID. I think we're all talking about that every day. So how it relates to sustainability, though, here comes a question in. Have you seen an impact on companies' commitments to sustainability in light of COVID-19? Or have companies kind of steady as she goes, maintain the course? What's your thought?
I think, as I think back to the March timeframe, at least here in the United States, when the pandemic was really kicking off, I'll have to admit I was just wondering what's going to happen with this message, because prior to that, it just seems like the message was really feverish on plastics is bad no matter what. But I didn't really hear a lot, and I suppose probably most didn't either, for obvious reason, because for a month and a half or so there were bigger fish that were being fried out there. But so I wondered at that time, but I would say a month and a half or so, maybe 2 months in, I feel like the conversation came back. But I also feel like the conversation was very different now, because I think that the consumer and others were really starting to see some of the value of plastics in the time of a pandemic, both from, face masks and face shields and breathing machines and ventilators and so many other things that were now disposable so that you didn't transmit the virus or any other negative impacts, just to name a few of those. And now the conversation still is, well, okay, we know that we need to have those products. We see the value of that. But guess what? That means there's going to be more of this stuff that's going to waste if we don't do something about it. So I feel like that is now really the conversation, that I think folks understand the value of plastics, the safety aspect, health and safety, et cetera. But at the same time, I think they understand that if we're going to keep that stuff, then we need to accelerate our efforts to get the right technologies to drive more recyclability.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Yeah, I think we had to level set, kind of go into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and just
exactly.
But yeah, and then plastics is like, my God, thank God these products exist, and so I think the next step is coming. Can some of these products be sustainable as well, that we're using so readily now? All right, boy, oh boy. Walter, you've touched a nerve here. We got so many questions. How does Avient support renewable energy? Is that part of your mandate as a sustainability VP?
Absolutely. Both internally and also externally. Mm-hmm. We are we have invested in both solar and wind applications at our actual sites around the world, but we're also accessing other renewable energy through different types of agreements that we have in place. So just operationally, we're making sure that we do that, but we're also supporting our customers with different types of technologies to help to support solar farms, wind fields, and other renewable applications like that. So just as an example, we help to manage energy in solar farm fields with different types of wire and cable solutions. We also provide different types of additives and master batches that help to enable both that infrastructure, but also in wind farms. We've looked at replacing metal or have developed solutions for replacing metal in even the wind blades. So we've actually done a lot of work in this area, and I know that it's been a really strong growth area for us.
Amazing. Yeah. The applications for plastics are seemingly endless.
They are.
Yeah. So, okay, short and sweet question. Walter, do you have an opinion on this? Do you have a preference, chemical versus mechanical recycling?
Oh, well, I don't know if you can answer that straight out because, in some cases, mechanical, at least with technologies today, don't work. Going back to the question earlier on in the discussion is, when you have materials which are that require many different layers, or at least multiple layers, or disparate materials that just don't act well together in a normal recycling process, that's one thing that advanced chemical recycling helps with. And there's some real major advancements going on in that area right now, certainly a lot on the smaller scale. And many of those, there are a number of them now that are being scaled up around the world right now. But not only does it take disparate materials and back it down to the different molecules, but it also takes any, different types of fillers or colors or anything like that out of the system. So I think to answer it simply, I would say where we can do it mechanically, I think I would prefer that. But in the cases where we can't, there are solutions that are being developed right now, really high-tech solutions that could move us towards getting closer to 100% recyclability.
Yeah, and that is the goal for sure. Well, to all of our viewers out there, thank you so much for all the questions. We did not get to all of them. We're going to make sure Walter sees them all, though, and he can reach out and answer them for you individually. So, Walter, any parting thoughts or something you'd like to leave the viewers with?
Well, first of all, thank you, and thanks everyone for joining today. I really do think that venues like these that are bringing our industry together up and down the value chain to help us learn from each other is exactly what it's going to take to help to accelerate our industry's move towards sustainability. So really appreciate this opportunity. I really do feel like our industry is going in the right direction now. I just gave you a few examples today, but we really do have to accelerate our efforts. And, I also gave you a couple of examples in ways that we can do that. So, finally, if you have any further questions about any of the topics we discussed today or any of the products that I talked about earlier, please don't hesitate to contact us given the information there on the screen. So thank you all very, very much.
Awesome. Well, wonderful job, Walter. Again, thanks for sharing your insights. As he just said, if you want to reach out to Walter, you can email him at the address on the screen. He'll get back to you, I'm sure. My thanks to Walter Ripple, Vice President Sustainability at Avient. My thanks to you for joining us today for Ask the Expert. Our Plastics, Recycling, and Circular Economy series continues tomorrow, Thursday, at 10 a.m. Eastern in the States, 4 p.m. Central European Time. Our topic tomorrow, plastic packaging recyclability and how to assess it. Our expert will be Paolo Glirin, Chairman of Recyclass. Tomorrow's sponsor, Tagleaf Industries. Until then, have a great day. I'm Brennan Lafferty. Thanks for watching Ask the Expert with Sustainable Plastics and Plastics News. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for a message from Avient.